So what we have here is just a quick recap, our VPC. So go to a resource map and you can see the two subnets here. One connected to the internet and one private. You can see there it's connected to the internet gateway. Go back into the subnets, tell you largely the same thing. The subnet here, so its route table, and you can see it's only got a local route, so it's no route to the internet. And our public subnet, it's got a route, default route to the internet gateway, IGW dash dot 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 dot. You can here you can see the internet gateway. All right, and just to recap on what we did in the last session was IAM, so we can see the policy here when it pops up. So DDVE IAM policy, and we'll assign that a role to an entity in a way. So the EC2 instance. So you can here see list, get, put, delete. So all the allowed actions in that policy. And here you can see our demo S3 bucket that's been stood up. Now there's nothing in this at the moment. So DDVE demo 1, and that's an EU West 1 region. All right, so now we'll just deploy an EC2 instance into our public subnet, and we'll test for connectivity both out to the internet and to the S3 bucket. This is our Bastion host. We should be able to do everything here, right, in terms of reaching the internet, right into the S3 bucket, and so on. So here's our key pair. So for our PuTTY, just got to make sure here we're actually in the public subnet, not the private. And auto assign IP, public IP. So we're going to open up everything here. This is the purpose of this demo here, right? So launch wizard 1, which is basically opens everything, right? And we're going to attach our IAM policy here for S3 access. So DDVE S3. Launch the instance. And that'll just take a couple of seconds to deploy. Go back here and check on its progress. Quick refresh. I could pause the video here, but okay, we'll just grab its public IP and we should be able to PuTTY into it when it's up. Whoops, just pasted in the private key. There we go. Try that again. Just add our key pair. Add the private key that you've downloaded earlier on. So here's my VPC key pair. And we should open and log in as EC2-user. All right, so I should be able to ping the internet. So here we go at dell.com. Results in DNS, and off we go. Good. ping response, ping Google, well, not Goggle. We'll try that again. Right, and all good. Next, we'll try and reach the S3 bucket that's in our region. So AWS S3 LS S3 and the name of the bucket. Okay, so it's actually empty, but it came back as a response, right? So usually that would hang if I couldn't reach it. So there's nothing in it, right? So let's put something in the bucket and we'll try that again. So let's create a dummy file. We're going to call this public S3 test.txt. Right, so just put in some dummy data into this file. This is a test file to see if we can write to the S3 from the public subnet. Write that file. Now let's try and copy that file up into the S3 bucket. So AWS S3 CP public S3.txt and the destination, which is S3:/ and the bucket. And that was uploaded successfully. Now we'll go back and do the ls again, and now we should see it in the bucket. All good. So just let's take a look in the console. Right, so we'll go S3 in the console, and we should see it there as well. So into S3, demo, there we go. Right, let's open it up. And here we can see it in the browser. This is a test file to see if we can write to S3 from the public bucket subnet. All good. Okay, so next we're going to deploy a EC2 instance to mirror our DDVE instance in the private subnet. T2 micro. This time we give it a little different key pair, a .pem, all right, so that I downloaded earlier, right, because we're going to have to add those credentials to the Bastion server to allow us to log on. Just make sure it's in the private subnet. And then in the security group, we're just going to use a pre-existing security group that's fully open, right? So we don't have complications around that. The next demo, we'll tighten that up. Here again, so add the IAM policy, DDVE S3, to allow access from that EC2 instance to the backend S3 bucket. And it looks like here we're all good. Yeah, just double checking. IP auto sign is off. This is obviously there's no need for a public IP on this. It's a private IP, private subnet. So now let's launch the instance. Just wait a couple of seconds. Refresh. Right, here it goes. You'll notice there's no public IP, obviously. It's internal. So we'll grab the private IP in a second. Double click on that and you can see it there, 10.120.236. We'll just copy that. And we'll go back to our Bastion server, right? We should be able to ping that, the internal address from the Bastion server, and we can. All right, we can try to SSH to it from the Bastion server, which will fail because we'll run into a credential issue, but we'll give it a go anyway. And yeah, permission denied. So now what we need to do is we need to load the private key, a PEM key, on the Bastion server, and then SSH using those credentials to the EC2 instance in the private subnet. Here we go. Here's what I have prepared earlier. So we'll just copy it, right? Change the permissions. Just check first that it's written. Yeah, there we go. All good. chmod 600 key.pem. Now we'll log on using those credentials to the private IP address of that EC2 instance. 10.100.20.236. Good to go. So now we're on the inside via the Bastion server, so that's the jump server. Just to double check, so there you can see 10.100.20.236 is the IP address. Now let's see if we can ping the internet, which of course we can't. We'll try Dell first. Nope. I can resolve the DNS, which is fine. So that's local. And can I ping cisco.com? I can't. Again, resolve the DNS, local to subnet. Google.com, I cannot. And of course now the AWS S3 test. Now that's going to hang because it's going to go off. It's got no route to it. Doesn't know how to get there, so I have to Control C out. Let's try actually the specific bucket itself. Again, it's going to hang. Just going to sit there doing nothing. Because the request isn't even getting to S3. Just to get that out of the way there for a second. Right, so how do we resolve this? We're going to do it via, just going to VPC and an endpoint, right? So we're going to configure an endpoint. So you can see the route table here actually in the private subnet first. You'd see here, we showed this at the start of the demo. It's only got one route, local. So it doesn't know how to get to S3. So we'll resolve that by creating an endpoint, an S3 endpoint. Call it DDVE -S3 endpoint. It's an AWS service, and we'll search for the S3 services. Just be careful to pick the gateway type. There we go. Attached to our VPC is only one VPC, and attached to our private subnet. Full access for now, and create a endpoint. So that pops up pretty quickly. Now go back into our route table and see what the endpoint has done to the private subnet. Go into routes. Well, it hasn't populated yet. Just take some time. Oh, oh, I was in the wrong one. There you go. So you see that? So prefix list, PL stands for prefix list. So if we can double down or double click on that, we can see the underlying subnets that are attached to that prefix list. It's all populated by AWS. So these are the CADRs or CIDRs associated with S3 on the outside. So they're all public address spaces. /20 is a pretty, /21, they're pretty, /17 are big address spaces. So now let's try and see if we can see our S3. And we can. So this is the public file that we wrote earlier. So now let's do one from the inside and see if we can write to the S3 instance. Write that and try and upload it to the bucket. AWS CP. And we can. Right, so just double check if it's there. Go back into S3. And yep, and there you go. So we can see it. And open it up. So this is indeed our file. Just going to list what's in the bucket there again, so we can see the two files, right, private and public. Now we'll delete the endpoint, and we'll try that again. And of course, this is going to fail. Or it's just going to hang, sit there, do nothing. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. Thank you very much.